shot might be slightly ruined by the sound of me munching on some apple turnover.
Right, this is it. This is it.
Alright, so some of you already know the story behind this video, but I'm going to explain it just in case you don't. Back in October, some idiot went on YouTube community posts and said, if 50,000 people subscribe to this channel, we organise a mass ascent of the highest mountain in the Dutch province of Flevoland. And now that exact same idiot is on his way to the Netherlands. And I brought my mate Dave. So why are we going climbing there instead of somewhere like, I don't know, Mount Everest? Well, the survival rate on Everest is about 97%, and for a Himalayan mountain, that's pretty good. But for a YouTube meetup, it's catastrophic. So I'm playing it safe. Almost all of Flevoland is below sea level. In fact, it used to be under the sea until the Dutch did their thing and drained the water away. But there are a few places that beat the 0-meter barrier. Places that used to be islands when the sea was still there. We're aiming for the biggest of them all, the mighty 7-meter peak on the beautifully named former island of Urk. But first of all, we've got another challenge.
Push towing cars down, turn like armed.
You can do this. I suspect it means when it's in there, push it in a sort of downwards direction. There you go.
Right, what's on telly?
This is sick!
How nice is this?
Got 2 beds and a sofa and a telly and a mirror. That's a bargain, isn't it?
So this is the story of what may well be the first ever mountain expedition to Flevoland. One of the ultimate dreams for a climber is to climb a mountain that no one has ever climbed before. And what we want to do here is climb a mountain that no one has ever called a mountain before. Which is nearly the same thing. Contains a lot of the same words anyway.
What is it you like about the Netherlands?
I've forgotten. Oh, no, I like cheese.
Yes.
I like cycling.
Yeah.
I like psychedelic.
Hello, guten Tag, and welcome to the industrial heartlands of Western Germany, where they've spent the last 40 years digging the biggest man-made hole in Europe. Yep, that's right, we've come here to see literally nothing. But if there's one thing I'm good at, it's making literally nothing interesting. No, wait. Oh, for goodness sake, who writes this stuff? I'm getting off the train in Duren, about halfway between Cologne and the Belgian border, and we're going to catch a bus from here to Obertsier, the nearest village to the Tagebau Hambach, or in English, the Hambach surface mine. A surface mine is a mine where instead of digging tunnels underground, you start above ground and just dig. So, in many ways, it's very much like a normal mine, except it's on the surface. Incidentally, this is really cool, a tactile map to help visually impaired people find their way around the bus station. We should have more of those in the world. But with the possible exception of people who can't actually see the place, it doesn't feel like Duren gets a lot of tourists. It's a historic town, but it got flattened during World War II, and you can kind of tell. Leaving Duren, the bus speeds through the kind of landscape that reminds you that we're not that far from the Dutch border, and 20 minutes later it drops you off in Obertsier. From here it's about a 50-minute walk to the edge of the mine. You can of course get there much quicker with a car or a bike. Here's what the area looks like on Google Maps. We're here in Obertsier. This, in case you hadn't guessed, is the mine, or at least the hole that's been dug so far. This, for those of you who watched my video about the Beckton Alps and are now big fans of spoil heaps, is the biggest spoil heap in the world. And this is the total area reserved for mining. So by 2040, all those fields at the bottom and any sign of the two villages that used to be there will have gone. That's why this motorway has been diverted around the area. It used to run straight through it. The old route is now a ghost road and sits there awaiting its eventual fate. Unless, of course, the whole project gets stopped by protesters. Apparently, you can't even dig a hole the size of a city these days without a few angry environmentalists turning up. Anyway, back to the walk, and in a weird way, and bear with me here, this feels a bit like approaching the Grand Canyon. You know it's there, you know it's huge, but I don't think we're going to actually see it until we're right next to it.
Definitely getting a bit of a whiff now. Whether that's the mine or the fertiliser is another question. Doesn't smell normal.
After a little more walking, we cross a main road and find a sign pointing to the Tagebau Hambach. So I guess it's just down here. This doesn't feel hugely welcoming so far. Ah, Tagebau Hambach. We've been accident-free for 83 days. Is that good? Is it bad? If it's good, does that mean the next accident's overdue? Oh, there we go, there is a welcome sign. Herzlich willkommen! With a large space underneath for the silent, you'd better have a good reason for being here.
Definitely a bit of moisture in the air. But it doesn't seem to be raining. So that's a concern.
There are a lot of fenced off areas here, and in fact, part of the reason that it's such a long walk to get to the mine is because you just have to go round stuff. This includes a huge railway yard where freight trains come to load up on lignite, the kind of brown coal that's being mined here. Lignite is a poor quality coal, which makes it a very inefficient fuel, and it's also spectacularly bad for the environment. But demand has shot up since 2011, when Germany started to shut down its nuclear power stations under pressure from environmentalists. Round of applause there. The walk carries on down what feels like a normal country lane. Mostly. This whole area used to be a forest, so if you ignore the fences and the warning signs for a moment, then what you're looking at here is kind of like the before photo in a before and after comparison. But if you're watching this video, I'm guessing it's because you wanted to see the after photo, right? You bunch of planet-wrecking sociopaths. Well, luckily, there's a little viewing platform over here where you can do just that. I mean, as holes go, it really is holy. From the edge here, it's 500 metres down to the bottom, and it's 5 kilometres wide. On a hazy day like today, you can't even see the other side. And of course, if you're going to dig a hole this big, you're going to need some seriously big diggers. The excavators here are monsters, straight out of science fiction. The biggest ones are nearly 100 metres tall, and they're heavier than any other vehicle on Earth. I really want to go down and get a closer look, but even if you don't speak German, you can probably tell that this sign doesn't say, "Hey, come on in." So we're going to need a drone. The only thing with that plan is that it is hazy today, so the views aren't going to be the best. And also I don't have a drone. Luckily though, I discovered that some people on the internet do have drones. And so with the very kind permission of 2 of them, here's a montage. And remember kids, while this place does look kind of cool, it's terrible for the environment, so please don't try and make one in your back garden. Thanks very much to Rob and to Drone Visions for letting me use their fantastic shots. I've linked both of their channels in the description. And thank you for watching! I'd love to grow this channel, so if you enjoyed the video, please do share it with 1,000 of your closest friends, whack that like button, subscribe if you're new around here, and I will see you soon. Right, who put the words "Europe's biggest hole" on a picture of my face? Hello, salam alaikum and azul. I'm in a taxi in the middle of the desert, and not just any desert, but the greatest desert on Earth, the legendary Sahara, where the golden sands stretch endlessly across 1 million horizons. And we're here to see a conveyor belt. This is Layun, the biggest city in... I guess this is where it gets complicated. Okay, we're going to need to talk about maps. Here is a map of Morocco, and here is a map of Morocco. And the problem with that is that I'm currently here. So we're inside what the United Nations calls Western Sahara, but what Morocco calls Moroccan Sahara. What Sahrawi nationalists call the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, and what I call a difficult topic for what was only supposed to be a silly little video about a conveyor belt. It's a dispute that led to a 16-year war for sovereignty over the area in the 70s and 80s. A ceasefire was finally agreed in 1991, with Morocco controlling about 3/4 of the land and the Sahrawis controlling the remaining quarter. To this day, the international community generally considers it disputed territory, but a lot of people on both sides still feel very strongly that the whole thing belongs to them. As we'll find out when they discover the comment section. Whatever you want to call this place, and whoever you think it belongs to, this is an area larger than the UK, with a population smaller than Luxembourg, and nearly half the population lives here in Layun. So when you hop in a taxi and ask for the world's longest conveyor belt, please, you're not out of town for long before you feel like you're alone in the world, and your only company is the vast expanse of the Sahara. And one extremely confused taxi driver. So, how exactly did anyone manage to start a fight in a place as empty as this? Colonialists arrived here in the late 1800s, and yes, I know, with my accent I sound like I was one of them, but please don't think I have anything in common with those guys. They were ignorant European men who came to Africa and acted like they knew everything, whereas I'm... Anyway, in 1885 they divided up most of the continent, and this bit became Spanish Sahara, which it remained right up to the 1970s. Morocco, which had already regained independence from France in the 1950s, felt quite strongly that Spanish Sahara was historically the southern part of Morocco, and they made this point to Spain on several occasions, using guns. What complicated things was that Mauritania to the south felt quite strongly that Spanish Sahara was historically the northern part of Mauritania, while the Sahrawis felt quite strongly that it belonged to them and wasn't historically part of anything. In 1975, under increasing pressure from all three sides and the UN to decolonise the area, Spain said, "We're handing it over. Morocco and Mauritania, you can share it between you and play nicely, okay? By the way, we're keeping a 35% share of the Bukra Phosphate Company." Remember that name for later. Right, have we forgotten anything? Oh yes, this is the administrative part. We don't actually get to right. So then, it's fair to say that the idea didn't really work out. The treaty fell apart almost immediately, and with each side blaming everyone else, a three-way war broke out between Morocco, Mauritania and the Sahrawis, although this became a two-way war in 1979 when Mauritania withdrew. It's worth reading more about it and listening to accounts from both sides if you want to understand what was going on, because the dynamics are far too complex for me to explain here, partly because I'm just some random outsider who's done a few hours research, and partly because we were supposed to be going to see a conveyor belt. Right, back to the taxi, and we're about to find out that the desert isn't quite as empty as I thought.
Lui, il est en train de débarrasser à la gonfle, c'est ça? D'accord. Oui, avec le vent, ça doit arriver tout le temps, quoi.
After 20 minutes of driving across the desert, sometimes quite literally, we arrive on the coast at the port town of El Marsa. The main business here is fishing, but the most lucrative one is phosphates, and we're heading to the big phosphate plant just down the road. Now, for those of you who aren't already experts in the world of phosphate production, you may not know that Morocco controls something like 70% of the planet's phosphate reserves. Every year, 3 million tons of the stuff comes through here to be exported around the world for use in fertilisers that grow the food that's imported by the supermarkets that sell it to you. But first it has to get here, and it does that not by lorry, not by boat, not even by train, but this, the longest conveyor belt on Earth. I mean, look at it, drink it in. This is almost certainly the greatest conveyor belt you're ever going to see, although admittedly it's a bit of a shame it isn't running still. From here, the belt stretches all the way to the horizon, and if you think that's impressive, you may not be ready for what I'm about to tell you, which is that the system carries on for 98 kilometres. And crossing over to pedantry corner for a moment, I say system because it's technically a continuous system of belts rather than one continuous piece of material. The route is marked by a long white streak on the landscape, which is caused by the desert winds blowing phosphate dust away from the belt, and because of this, I've seen various sources claiming that it's one of the few man-made things that you can see from space. And if any of you are watching this video from space, please do comment and let us know if that's true. So that's all very impressive, but what's it got to do with anything? Well, the belt was built in the early 1970s by the biggest mining company in what was then still Spanish Sahara, and that company was called, some of you are there already, the Bukra Phosphate Company. The same company, the same phosphate mine, and the same conveyor belt that was written into an international treaty, and was, if not the main reason, one of the reasons why that treaty failed. The story of the conflict here is one that seems to have been forgotten by the international media, and a lot of issues remain unresolved, to say the least. But for the sake of this record-breaking conveyor belt, the price of the food on your table, and what's the other thing the international media sometimes forgets? Oh yeah, the people here, let's at least hope for lasting peace. If you'd like to see the world's longest conveyor belt system and you don't have access to a spacecraft, Laayoune has flights and long-distance buses from Marrakesh and Casablanca, with no extra entry requirements. Visiting the Sahrawi zone, however, is not possible, as the border is guarded by Moroccan military, landmines and a wall, but you may find some Sahrawis still living here. As a general rule, it's best to respect the situation when talking to people on either side. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please drop a like on the video if you weren't hugely offended by it, so we can try and balance out the people who were, and I will see you soon. Hello and bonjour. It is July 2020 and I'm in the little village of La Cure in the Jura Mountains, where I'm about to spend the night in this specific hotel. And yes, I am travelling again. Last week, France formally ended its state of emergency. Hotels have been open for about a month now, and French residents are allowed to travel pretty much anywhere in Europe, with a few exceptions. But the government has suggested that we might want to take our holidays in France this year, which I think is partly to do with controlling the virus, and partly because they want to boost their own economy. So, Mr. President, you're going to be very happy with me. I am staying in France. Right until the moment where I roll over in bed. Welcome to the Hotel Arbe. This is the Hotel Arbe, also known as l'Arbésie Franco-Suisse, and it is built on the border of France and Switzerland, and I mean that literally. The line runs right through the middle of the building, bisecting the restaurant, the hallway, the staircase, and 3 of the rooms, including mine. So, how did this end up happening? Well, the story starts in 1862 with a good old territorial dispute over a small area not too far from here called the Vallée des Dappes. The valley had been seized by Napoleon's France at the start of the 1800s and then returned to Switzerland after his defeat at Waterloo. But the French had always kind of wanted it back as it was a very useful military route for them. Eventually they offered the Swiss an exchange. If Switzerland gave France the Vallée des Dappes, then France would give Switzerland a Vallée des Dappes-sized bit of France. The two sides agreed and signed a treaty on the 8th of December 1862. Job done, right? Well, not quite. The small chunk of land that France was giving up included half the village of La Cure. So as far as I can tell, some of the villagers woke up to discover that they had been given away to Switzerland. Others found that the new border was going to go straight through their house. So a clause was written into the treaty stipulating that any building that was built before the treaty came into effect was protected and could remain where it was. And that gave one man an idea. Monsieur Pontus of La Cure happened to own a vacant piece of land that was going to be bisected by the new border. And in the 3 months between the treaty being signed and the treaty being ratified by the Swiss Parliament in February 1863, he built this. I'm guessing he had some help. But because it was completed before the treaty came into force, there was nothing the authorities could do about it. The building didn't start life as a hotel. Originally, there was a grocery store on the Swiss side and a bar on the French side. Now, you'd think there might have been a temptation to take advantage of the cross-border location for other kinds of business. But the French are a highly moral nation with a great respect for rules. And, who am I kidding? There was all kinds of smuggling and contraband going on. But when Monsieur Pontus eventually died in 1895, his 2 sons decided to move away from that and turned the building into a hotel. And in 1921, they sold it to a man called...
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kathy. We're with me in the cabin today are Brian and Jordy. We would like your attention as we go over important safety features of this Airbus A319 aircraft. Please follow along with the safety information card located in the pocket of our Fasten your seatbelt and place the metal tab into the buckle. To tighten, pull the loose end of the strap, and to release, lift up the flat portion of the buckle. Your seatbelt should be secured low and tight about your hips and worn anytime you are seated. There are 6 emergency exits, 2 forward exit doors, 2 overwing window exits, and 2 rear exit doors. 9th overhead and aisle path lighting lead to all exits. All exits are equipped with evacuation sites and play automatically. Look around and locate the exit nearest to you. Keeping in mind your nearest exit may be located behind you. If needed, oxygen masks will drop from the compartment above your seat. Pull the mask over your face, place it over your nose and mouth, and breathe
Over
normally.
the course of the
Secure
war,
the mask
the
with
Arbe
the elastic
family
strap.
had hundreds of
Although
Jewish
oxygen
people
will be
and
flowing, the
members of the
plastic bag
host
cannot adhere
to
to the
escape
space.
to safety.
The crew member will inform you when it is safe to remove your
When
mask.
hostilities
Be
ended,
sure
they
to
were
secure
thanked
your own
in
mask
person
before
by
assisting
Charles de
others.
Gaulle, and later awarded a medal by the
For
Yad Vashem
passengers
Institute
seated in our
in Israel.
economy seats, a light vest
Meanwhile,
is located
as
under your
peace
seat.
returned, France
For
and
passengers
Switzerland
seated
came
in
to
big
an
front
unusual
seats, light vests are
agreement.
located
From now on,
between your
the
seats.
building would be
All
considered
light vests can
Swiss
be used for
territory
adults or
French
children.
citizens
Infant light
and
vests will
French
be provided by your
territory
crew if
to Swiss
necessary.
citizens.
To
The
use it,
RV
tear off
family
the plastic
reacted by
pouch,
semi-seriously
remove the vest, and
declaring
slip it over your head.
independence from both
Strap the
as the
strap
micronation
around your waist.
of RBZ.
Fasten the buckle,
And in fact,
and
the
pull the
red
tab
tree
on the
on
loose
the
end
yellow
of the strap
background
to
you
tighten
see
it.
around the hotel
Upon
is their
exiting
flag.
the aircraft,
The
pull down on the red
triangular
tab
shape
to
is
inflate
inspired
the
by the
vest.
shape of the
It is important that you do not
principality
inflate the vest while
itself.
inside the
The
aircraft.
status is both
To
sort of
manually
French
inflate
and
or
sort of not
or top off the
helped
vest,
create
go into the
another
tube at
historic
shoulder
moment
level.
in 1961
A
when
water
it was chosen
activated
to
rescue
host
light
the
is
start of
attached to each
negotiations
vest.
between France and Algeria.
There are two light traps at the forward doors and two at the rear doors on either side of the airplane.
Since then,
Evacuation
things have
flights with the overwing anchors are not light rafts and will not
while the
provide
village can get
flotation.
busy in the ski season, it's
Your
otherwise
safety information
quiet
card shows raft
place.
locations
In fact,
and the
the
proper
most
use of
dramatic
all
thing
water
that's likely to
equipment.
happen is that if
Federal
you
law
happen to
requires
go
passenger
around a bit,
compliance with
the
lighted
Border
passenger
Customs
information
official
signs,
comes over and
posted
asks
placards,
you
and
what
crew
you're
member
doing building a
instructions.
lamppost. And
Spirit
with that,
Airlines does
it's
not allow
probably time
smoking
for
on
you to
board,
go to
and
bed.
federal law prohibits
Incidentally,
tampering with,
while they say
disabling,
they
or
don't like
destroying
the
any
ordinance this
laboratory
way,
smoke
I've since
detector.
realised that it's actually this way. And
Please
frankly,
check to see that your
what better
seatbelt
way
is
to
fastened,
celebrate the
your
14th
window
of
shade
July
is up,
than
your
having my
seat
head
back is in its full
separated from
upright
my body
position,
by the
your
French.
tray table is secured, and all carry-on items are stowed.
If you'd like to visit
We
the
will be
Hotel
dimming our lights
Abbé,
for
it's
takeoff.
about an hour
For your
north of
convenience,
Geneva
you will
by
find a
car
reading
or
light,
an hour
an
and a
air
half
vent, and a
by
flight
train,
attendant call button
including a
above
ride
your
on the
seat.
very scenic
Our
Lyon
estimated
Saint-Cyr
flight
to
time
Belgium.
today is 2 hours
If you
and
want to
8
sneak
minutes,
on
and
the
thank
border
you for
and
your
ask
attention
for
and
room
welcome aboard.
6, 9 or 12. I was in room 6, which cost €90 for the night. Unfortunately, it's an old building with no lift, so if you have accessibility issues, I wouldn't recommend staying here, but you can still enjoy an international meal in the ground floor restaurant. And that's about it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you soon.
Have a good flight position waiting for the visual. Thank you and goodbye.
Hello and bonjour. It is May 2021 and I'm on a bus. And we're going to a little village called Bousigny-sur-Roc in the northern French countryside, squeezed right up next to the Belgian border. Because a couple of weeks ago, this village hit international news when a local farmer on the Belgian side moved a stone out of the way of his tractor. Which wouldn't normally be international news, except this particular stone was an official marker of the border between France and Belgium. And because he'd moved it a couple of metres towards Bousigny, he'd made the sovereign nation of France a couple of square metres smaller. Or at least, that's the story that went round the world. And I don't want to dampen anyone's French fries, but as a part-time professional pedant, I have some questions. For example, can you really move an international border just by moving a stone? Was it really in the way of someone's tractor? And perhaps most importantly, for French viewers at least, it's now a couple of weeks after the news broke. Have you got your country back yet? Welcome to Bousigny and the Belgian border bungle. This is Bousigny-sur-Roc, a rural village of about 400 people, most of whom seem to work on a farm. It's the kind of place where everyone will give you a friendly bonjour, and I get the impression nothing much has happened since about the 1940s, when, because it's on the French-Belgian border, admittedly quite a lot happened, but let's try not to bring all that up again. It's home to an 18th century church, a small town hall, several cows, and a few horses. And of course, we're not here to see any of that.
So the mission today is very simple. Number 1, find the border stone. And number 2, see if it's in the right place.
Now that does sound simple, except I don't actually know where we're going, and because I'm a man, it hasn't even crossed my mind to ask for directions. So first, let's have a look at a map. Here is Bousigny, where the bus dropped us off. We're looking for a border stone, so chances are, and go with me here, it's on the border. Problem is, Bousigny is surrounded by the border on 3 sides, so the stone could be anywhere along this extremely squiggly line. Our first mission then is to find at least the border, and hopefully a stone, and then we can work from there.
So, if I've got it right, Belgian border is just up there, and these are the woods where we should find that stone. Should be nearly there. Ah! That looks a lot like a border stone.
It's not the one, but it is a one. They date back, as I'm sure you all know, to the 1820 Treaty of Kortrijk, which defined the border between France and Belgium, except back then Belgium was still part of the Netherlands, which is why this is a Dutch flag and the stones have the letter N on them. When Belgium gained independence 10 years later, it inherited the border, which has stayed much the same ever since, even if some of the rivers that it was supposed to follow haven't. So, if I move this stone, does that mean I've moved the border? Well, no. Not since about 100 years ago. These days, the border is fixed by more advanced technologies, but moving a stone is still, legally, a contravention of the Treaty of Kortrijk, so I'm going to leave it alone. And anyway, we now need to find the one that has been moved, and we still don't know exactly where it is, so let's go back to those news articles to try and find some clues. As far as I can tell, the story was first picked up by the regional newspaper La Voix du Nord, or in English, The Voice of the North. They tell us that the discovery was made by 3 local historians who were out for a walk along the border when they came across a stone that wasn't in the right place. And one of them, Jean-Pierre Chopin, is quoted as saying, "I immediately got the impression that the border stone, located right at the end of the woods, had moved." Well, that's quite useful because we now know it's at the end of the woods, and looking back at the map, that means it must be at a point where the border comes out of a wood. In other words, here, here, or here, or actually it could be quite a lot of places. But wait, that's not the only clue, because in another article they tell us it's between Bousigny-sur-Roc and the Belgian village of Montigny-Saint-Christophe. That helps us narrow it down a bit, and we also have all these photos and videos. We know that it looks like this. We also know that Monsieur Chopin, who is probably a serious historian, has now been described on national television as a border stone hunter. Imagine that was your career, going around hunting for border stone... Oh wait. Anyway, I reckon we start heading through the woods towards this spot at the eastern end.
There is just one problem. So, I've actually had to come slightly into Belgium. I'm walking along the border itself at the moment. The trees are in France, and the path is in Belgium. And the problem is, the trees, the woods here, that's private property, so I can't walk through it. So I had to come into Belgium. And technically at the moment, visitors to Belgium are still supposed to quarantine. But if you're visiting for less than 48 hours, you do not need to quarantine. You don't even need a test. So, as long as we get out in 48 hours, we should be all good. Also, that looks a lot like the stone. And here it is, the famous stone. And it's still over there. I still don't quite get this story about a farmer moving it because he couldn't get his tractor through. Where the stone is now, and where the stone is supposed to be, which as far as I understand is just a couple of metres to the left here, doesn't make a lot of difference. You're not getting a tractor through the barbed wire fence anyway. So that story seems a bit suspect.
And the reason it seems suspect is because it's not true. In the original French article, all that Monsieur Chopin says is that the farmer probably moved the stone to make his field bigger. They then asked the mayor of Bousigny, Madame Velonec, who says,
"The stone definitely moved, but it weighs more than 150 kilos. Must have used a tractor."
someone somewhere has mashed those two quotes together to get an angry farmer who finds a stone in the way of his tractor. It's probably a completely innocent total misrepresentation, but it just happens to make a more clickable headline. This is what then spreads around the globe as fact, and now you know how viral journalism works. And look, I'm not having a go at anyone. It is very easy to make mistakes in research. In fact, thanks to the laws of irony, there's almost a 100% chance that I've done it somewhere in this video. Please enjoy letting me know in the comments. But there is a final twist to the story. France Bleu managed to track down the Belgian landowner himself. Turns out he's not even a farmer, he's a retired veterinary surgeon, and he says he didn't do it. So there we go. There is no farmer, and even if he was one, he says he didn't move the stone, it wasn't in his way, and even if he did and it was, it wouldn't really have moved the border, and France hasn't really lost any territory. The end. Except, what actually happened here? The truth itself remains a mystery. We may never know who moved the stone, or how and why they did it. It's a modern-day Stonehenge. Now normally at this point in the video I tell you how you can come and visit this place yourself, but with the border situation here still unresolved at the time of filming, the question you're probably asking is it safe? Well, despite some signs of potential civil unrest in Bousigny, I can bring you good news. The Belgian mayor of Montigny has promised to put the stone back, while on her part, the French mayor of Bousigny has stated that conflict should be avoidable, and for the time being, here, in the couple of square metres of disputed territory itself, a fragile peace remains. Anyway, I've only got 47.5 hours now to get myself out of Belgium, so thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon.
Slats for track.
Hello and bonjour. It is early February 2021. The temperatures have dropped below freezing overnight, and Paris has woken up to a magical dusting of fresh white snow. And I think we all know what that means. Stay at home when you wrap up warm. No, Mum, it means I rush out and make some content about it. Look, I can't talk right now, okay? Love you, bye. Now, if you've been watching my videos for a while, you know one of my favourite things to do is climb a mountain. And this snow is making me dream of winter ascents and alpine adventures. Unfortunately though, one thing Paris is not famous for is its majestic mountain ranges. The highest summit within the city is Montmartre, which is only 130 metres above sea level, as you know, because you watched my video about it. But I've done some Googling and I think I've found the closest we're going to get. Yes, it is time to climb the highest point in the whole of Ile-de-France. What's Ile-de-France? Well, it's the region Paris is in. Paris and Ile-de-France is a bit like London and the home counties, or New York City and New York State, or... Wait, how are you still here? So here's the plan. From Saint-Lazare, we're getting line L as far as La Défense, and then changing onto line U, which will take us all the way out to a place called Trappes, which lies at the foot of the mountain. Now, Trappes, how can I put this? Trappes does not have the best reputation right now in France. Last week, the local mayor appeared on a national televised debate called "Is Trappes a Dangerous Town?" and defended it by saying, "There are problems in my town, like every town in France, and here there's a bit more than in other places." But despite high levels of unemployment and poverty and all the other issues that tend to come from that, this small town has produced film stars like Omar Sy and Jamel Debbouze, footballers like Nicolas Anelka and Patrick Vieira, and the singer Shaim, who most of you have probably never heard of, but in France she's basically Rihanna. Yes, Mum? Who's Rihanna? Oh, never mind. Anyway, of course, we're here to climb the highest point in Ile-de-France, and that means getting off the bus right on the edge of Trappes at the foot of La Colline d'Elancourt, the hill of Elancourt.
Right, that is the hill. Let's do this.
Elancourt is the suburb that neighbours Trappes, and this particular bit of it is home to an enormous bus garage, an industrial business park, and the local waste disposal site.
Welcome to Elancourt, everyone. It's so pretty in the snow.
Yes, finally I found a place in France that isn't ridiculously beautiful, and all it took was coming to an actual literal dump. Because here's the dirty secret. Before the 1950s, there was no hill here. In fact, it was almost the opposite. The area was pocketed with quarries, and they were extracting sand and stone to help build the rapidly expanding suburbs. But then, all the new houses and industries started producing waste, and they needed somewhere to put it. I think you can all see what happened next. Within a decade or so, they hadn't just backfilled the old quarry, they'd thrown together enough bits and pieces of household junk,
Ladies and
industrial
gentlemen,
waste, and
Captain has
excavated
turned off his
earth to
seatbelt
create the
sign.
highest hill
For your safety,
in the whole
we do
Paris
recommend that
region.
you keep them on as we can get unexpected
Anyway, we've
turbulence.
now reached base
Thank
camp
you.
for our ascent
In a
of
few
the
moments,
summit.
the flight
Right.
attendants will
For
be
the first
passing
time
around the
in
cabin
far
to
too
offer
long.
you hot or cold drinks and
Let's
food.
climb a mountain.
Please check
The
the
peak
magazine
stands
in
at a
front of
mighty
you for our latest offers
231
on
metres
food,
above sea
drink
level.
and
That's almost
duty-free
twice as high
shopping.
as Montmartre. Admittedly, the town of Elancourt itself is already at 170 metres, which means the total climb of 60 metres is actually about the same, but let's ignore that. Because, make no mistake, what I am taking on here is an Olympic challenge. I'm not even kidding. Right now, you are looking at the site that will host the mountain biking event at the 2024 Games. So it's not just me calling this a mountain, it's the actual Olympics. You can't argue with it. And hopefully by then there'll be a few more signposts.
This way? Yes. You know, it's all upwards. Beginning to think the other path would have been a better option, but this one is sort of gradually curving around the base of the mountain, and I would have preferred to just go straight up. But hey, we'll make it there eventually. Ah, here we go. Yeah, this is definitely the kind of path that I should have been on to start with. It's quite steep there. But I think we are nearly there. There we are. La colline d'Elancourt.
On a clear day, you can see the Eiffel Tower from here, poking its head above the horizon. Today it's not quite clear enough, so here's a photo I took from the same spot on a summer ascent a few years ago, with quite a lot of zoom. And of course, the Eiffel Tower is kind of the elephant in the room, because although we're on the highest piece of land in Ile-de-France, it's not the highest point you can get to. Anyone on the tower's observation deck would be 85 metres above us. But that is currently closed, which means standing right here on the summit of the Colline d'Elancourt in February 2021, you are looking down on every single Parisian. And it does make a nice change for it to be that way round. If you'd like to climb the hill of Elancourt, or perhaps you're competing in the 2024 Olympics, the closest station is Trappes. You can take the same route that I did from Saint-Lazare, or there's a direct train from Montparnasse. From Trappes station, the number 418 bus will drop you right at the bottom of the hill. On the way back to Paris, be careful. Your train will go from platform 2B. The reason I mention this is because these are platforms 1 and 2, and this is where they put 2B. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon. Hello and bonjour everyone. It is April 2021 and at the start of the month, two things happened.
Number one, we hit 200,000 subscribers on the channel. And number two, France chose that exact moment to go back into lockdown.
So, you've hit a subscriber milestone. I can't travel anywhere for the next few weeks. I think we all know what this means. It's time for a Q&A.
So I put up a community post asking for you to send in your questions.
Loads of you did, and today I'm going to try and answer, where are you going? What do you do? Why are you in Paris? What's that music? Who's this? Where's that? Let's roll the intro. Oh, hang on, stop the intro, because we've got a question about it. Samite Fan asks, where are the places in your intro? Okay, we'll start with this year's intro, because all of these places are ones that I visited on the channel, and you can find them in my old videos. That was the legendary Flevoland mountain expedition in Urk, Netherlands. This is a ditch somewhere in Woolwich in London. That was the Völklingen abandoned ironworks in Germany. And this was the Lartigue monorail in Listowel, Ireland. But if you're talking about the old intro, and a few of you definitely were, then that's another story. Because I originally made it for the first ever Tim Traveller video, and of course back then I didn't have any clips from the channel that I could use, so I raided my old holiday photos to find random bits of throwaway video that I'd made over the years, just messing around, and I used those. Problem is, I kept getting questions about it in the comments, mostly from distressed Finnish or Israeli people saying, I can see you visited my country, but I can't find the video. Where is it? And well, unfortunately, there is no video. All of those clips are from before I started YouTube. And what's worse, it's not even Israel. But anyway, the 5 places are Suomenlinna Fortress Island in Helsinki, Finland, East Point on the Isle of Skye in Scotland, the Dead Sea in Jordan, but with Israel in the background, Zabriskie Point in Death Valley, USA, and finally, the spectacular Meteora in Greece. Right, on to the rest of the questions now, and Smith3 asks, are there any countries you want to visit or had plans to visit before the pandemic? Yes, so many. I mean, last year I was planning to do videos in the Nordic countries, in Eastern Europe, in North Africa, and maybe even further afield if the ad revenue was really coming in, but, well, you know what happened, and instead, you got a whole year of videos about France. Anyway, I keep a list on my computer called Tim Traveller Video Ideas, because of course I do, and I've got 100 ideas on there in about 40 different countries. I cannot wait to start bringing those to you, but we just have to sit it out for the moment. Hopefully it will be possible soon. BWI Aviation asks, so what exactly is it that you do for a living? This one keeps coming up, and it seems to confuse a lot of you because I guess it is unbelievable that you could make a living from videos like mine, but here's the full story. I used to have a sensible office job in London, and I did that for 10 years until eventually I wanted a break and I quit to go travelling for a bit. And this was end of 2017, beginning of 2018. Since I was travelling and I had a bit of spare time, I thought, well, why don't I make some travel videos? Best case scenario, they help to fund more travels, and worst case, no one watches them, but I've made some nice memories for when I go back to the sensible office job. Thanks to you lot, I haven't gone back to the office job yet. I do have some other gigs outside YouTube. I do live work as a musician, but since the pandemic hit, all of that stopped, and this is my only job at the moment, so genuinely, thank you all for keeping me employed. On a related note, nearly everyone asks, do you perform the piano music in your videos? Yes, I do, and to answer the other 2 little questions that were in there, I play guitar as well, not to the same standard, but you'll hear it in some of my videos, including one where my B string was completely out of tune. And I cannot tell you what all the pieces are, I'm sorry, it would take far too long, but there was a question about the intro and outro music, and I will answer that at the end of this video. Eknivo asks, I was wondering how your real-life job brought you to live in France, and how did your foreign languages get so good? So there is no real-life job. I moved here really because of this job, and part of the reason why YouTube appealed to me in the first place is because you have the freedom to work from anywhere, and you've seen my videos, I really do. And although I love London, I always kind of miss the adventure of living abroad. Wait, Tim, you lived abroad before? Is that how you learned French? Is this about to be covered in the next question? Jack Elvey asks, did you go to university? If so, which one and what did you study?
Yes, I did. This one.
It's not very well known, but the University of London has a tiny little institute in Paris called, wait for it, the University of London Institute in Paris. You can come here as a British or international student and get a degree in French, and when I was younger, that's exactly what I did. I don't know if it's still the same now, but when I went, I think there were 30 people in my entire year. And because it was so small, there was no campus, no student accommodation, no student bar in the evenings, nothing was really laid on for you. So it was a proper adventure. You'd have to go out and find your own flat, and then your own places to socialise, and after 1 week of that, your student loan had run out, so you'd have to find some work as well. All of that at 18 years old, and in French. It was a great experience, but it was quite tough. You had to grow up quite quickly, and to be honest, the romantic idea of studying in Paris begins to lose its shine when you realise it's a real city, you're living in a shoebox, and you're scraping enough change together to buy a packet of pasta from Liederpreis. But, you know, we were happy in those days, although we were poor. Sorry, where was I? Jago Hazard asks,
have you ever been really surprised by the way a video has been received?
I've been surprised by the way the whole channel has been received, but the biggest surprise was the video about Paris's fake facades. People just keep clicking on that. It's up to 5 million views now. I guess for whatever reason, it appeals to a wider audience. I'm not complaining about it. And on the other end of the scale, there's the follow-up. 5 more fake facades in Paris, which I admit isn't my best video ever. It's what we'll call lockdown content. I was just making what I could in the circumstances. But I did hope that YouTube might go and recommend it to all the people who'd watched the first one. It didn't. Caesar Opt asks, as an English speaker who learned French, what is the hardest French word to pronounce? Are there any words that give you away as not a native speaker? Thank you so much for asking this. There are a lot of things that give me away as not a native speaker, but if I have to think of one word, it would probably be this. And instead of demonstrating how bad I am at saying it, I'm going to pass you over to my French cousin so you can all learn it.
Hello! Today we will learn how to say the word hug in French. And it is this. Grenouille. 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 We have deliberately made this word impossible for the English speaker to say. And there is a very good reason for that. You may insult us in your stupid English, but you will never insult us in French.
Kate Cole asks, are you going to do a collab with Jeff when Corona goes away? I would love to, and I know a lot of you want to see this because there were a lot of questions about it. But, you know, as always with collabs, it's difficult for me to say, yes, that's definitely going to happen, unless you're Jeff himself asking that question. Jeff Marshall asks,
my question would be, when are you coming back to Britain and we can do a lease you station together? Come join me on my channel.
Well, I guess that clears that one up. I've spoken to Jeff and we've penciled in a trip to a leased use station. Obviously, it all depends on things opening up again and travel being possible, but I'm absolutely honoured to be invited and hopefully we can make it happen sometime soon. Matty Comender asks, how did you end up in Unfinished London? How did you end up in London? How did you end up in Unfinished London? Sorry, for any of you who don't know, Unfinished London is a brilliant YouTube series by Jay Foreman that I have sneakily appeared in twice. And even if you've never seen it, I think it's worth telling the story. It all starts before this channel even existed. Back when I was Tim, I was just some bloke who's a fan of Jay's videos. Still am, really. Jay, as he sometimes does, put out a tweet asking for extras for a scene. And it was the other side of London, it was a bit of a pain to get to, but I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do it. So I went along, and little did I know, I ended up in a scene with Jeff. And in one evening, I'd met 2 of my favourite YouTube people. Of course, they don't remember it, I was just some bloke, but that kind of pushed me over the edge to make my first Tim Traveller video. No views, no subscribers back then, but Jeff very kindly retweeted it, 20 or 30 people subscribed, and a Greek man called Steramel made what I think is the first ever comment. A year or so later, YouTube suddenly spammed my videos to half the Western world, Jay discovered the channel, invited me to appear in another episode, and the rest, as they say, is very silly.
He didn't like it for 2 reasons.
I don't like it for 2 reasons. And finally, Breadface asks, what are the 2 music tracks that are in nearly all of your videos at the end and the start? Well, the intro track doesn't have a name, it's just an instrumental backing track that I originally made for a hiking video, and then it ended up kind of like everything else in my intro. I just needed something to go in there, and that piece of music was lying around, so in it went. And then the music at the end is a piano cover I made of a track called The Carnival by Gordon Giltrap, which is better known in the UK as the theme to holiday TV show Wish You Were Here. If you've never seen it, it was a peak time evening show that ran from the 70s to the early 2000s, and basically every week they'd have 4 presenters and each one would go on holiday to a different place. They were forever going to the Seychelles, Saint-Tropez, or some beautiful beach resort in the Bahamas. They'd file a 5-minute report about it, and that was their job. It was the best programme to be a presenter on. There's a woman called Judith Chalmers who got the job and held on to it for 30 years. But at the end of each report, they would always tell you how to do it yourself. They'd say which hotel they'd stayed in, who they flew with, how much it cost. So when I did my first Tim Traveller video, I thought it would be funny to do the same thing about the kind of places that I go to. So I made a version of the music partly as a gag, partly as a parody, and partly as a tribute. If you want to go and buy the original track, it's called The Carnival and it's on Amazon Music and all the other places. I'll link it in the description below. And that seems like a good place to end today's Q&A. Thanks to everyone who sent questions in. If I didn't answer your one directly today, then hopefully one of the other answers sort of covered it, but
FS Realistic.
Thank you. and gentlemen, in final preparation for our arrival, please make sure your seatbelts are securely fastened, window shades are open, tray tables are securely stowed. All carry-on baggage, including purses and backpacks, need to be completely stowed underneath the seat in front of you. Nothing should be on your lap before arrival. This is for your safety and the safety of the other guests traveling with us. Laptop computers and similar sized electronic devices need to be powered off and stowed at this time. Cell phones may remain on as long as they continue to be in airplane mode. Passengers are going to walk through the cabin at this time to collect all service items. Take a moment to look around your immediate seating area and the seat back pockets for any items, and to the flight attendants as they walk by. It has been our pleasure to have you with us today on our flight. We should be on the ground very shortly.
it.
400. Autopilot. 300. Minimums. Light slow. Light slow. Light slow. Light slow. 100. 30. 20. 10.
That landing was good.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, how about that landing? We're about like 14 minutes early. So the next flight Spirit Airlines is 14 minutes delayed or late or whatever you want to call it. We'll just call it even. Please remain seated with your seatbelt securely fastened until the aircraft has come to a complete and final stop at the gate. At that time, the captain will turn off the fasten seatbelt sign, and you may feel free to collect any belongings you brought on board. Use caution when opening the overhead bins as contents may have shifted, and y'all know shift happens. Smoking is prohibited until you reach a designated smoking area. If this is your final destination, all checked baggage will be the baggage claim area. If you're connected to another Spirit Airlines flight, all checked baggage will be transferred automatically. We do ask that you please remain seated as we're taxiing. Once again, we are in the active taxiway. Please remain seated with your seatbelt securely. You may now use your portable electronic devices, keeping in mind the device set to airplane mode or the cellular service is turned off. And ladies and gentlemen, for those of you needing special wheelchair assistance on today's flight, we do ask that you please remain seated to everybody at the planes. This will also help us further better assist you as well. For more day of travel information, please visit spirit.com, where you can also find our ultra low fare deals on our hotel, car rental, resorts, bundles, and packages, as well as our deals on cruises. And in there you can also find the section where you can compliment how amazing your Spirit experience was or how awesome your crew is on today's flight. And for any of you that have anything bad or negative to say about Spirit or our crew in general, just go to American.com and give it to them instead. And I remind you that my name is Cindy and I personally sent you. It has been certainly been a pleasure bringing you back home with us, and we sure do hope to see you again soon on another future Spirit Airlines flight.
Ladies and gentlemen, the doors have now opened and we are ready to disembark the aircraft. Once again,